The air in Tunnel 9 didn't just smell like coal. It smelled like regret. As Caleb watched the heavy oak support beam splinter like a toothpick, he realized the promise he made to his wife that morning was about to be broken. The mountain groaned a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the soles of his boots and into his very bones. He looked at the rookie junior, whose eyes were wide with a terror that hadn't yet found a voice. Before Caleb could scream run, the world turned into dust and darkness. And in that silence, the only thing louder than the shifting rock was the beating of his own heart, ticking down the seconds of air left. The alarm clock on the bedside table didn't buzz, it clicked, a singular, sharp, mechanical sound that sliced through the silence of 3:30 in the morning. Caleb Thorne didn't need the alarm, though he had been awake for 10 minutes, staring at the ceiling fan that was barely turning, listening to the rhythm of the house settling in the wind. Beside him, Sarah breathed deeply, a soft and steady rhythm that anchored him to the world above ground. He moved carefully, sliding out from the warmth of the quilt, his joints popping with a stiffness that 40 years of gravity and hard labor had gifted him. The floorboards were cold against his bare feet as he walked to the kitchen. This was the ritual. The coffee pot was already prepped. He just had to hit the button. While it brewed, filling the small kitchen with the scent of dark roast, Caleb looked out the window. There was nothing to see but the black outline of the hills against a dark purple sky. Mingo County, West Virginia. It was beautiful in the daylight, rolling green and wild, but at this hour it looked like a wall surrounding him. He poured the coffee into a battered steel thermos. It was dented on the side from the time he dropped it down a shaft in '98. It survived. E sopravvide. They were both a little bent out of shape, but they still held heat. That was all that mattered in this line of work. Caleb grabbed his lunch pail, a bologna sandwich, an apple, and a fierce note from Sarah telling him to be careful. She wrote one every single day. He never threw them away. They were stuffed in the glove box of his truck, a paper shield against bad luck. The drive to the mine was quiet. The radio didn't work in the truck, but Caleb preferred the silence. It gave him time to think before the noise began. The noise of the crusher, the belts, the ventilation fans that screamed like jet engines. He pulled into the gravel lot, the headlights sweeping over the faces of the other men. Good men. Men who would give you the shirt off their back or the last sip of water in their canteen. He saw Junior Miller leaning against his truck, smoking a cigarette with a shaking hand. Junior was 20. He had a baby on the way and a mortgage he couldn't afford. He was new to the deep mines, still jumping at shadows. Caleb parked and walked over, his boots crunching loud on the frost-covered ground. "Ease up on that smoke, son," Kalen said, his voice low and gravelly, seasoned by years of breathing dust. "You'll need those lungs later." Junior crushed the cigarette out, managing a nervous smile. "Morning, Caleb." "Big seam today, they say?" "They always say it's a big seam," Caleb replied, looking toward the elevator shaft cage. "Just keep your head on a swivel, Junior. The mountain doesn't care about your mortgage. It only cares about gravity." The locker room, though dry, smelled of sweat, industrial soap, and sulfur. It was the smell of brotherhood. Caleb stripped off his street clothes and pulled on his blues. They were stiff with coal dust that no washing machine could ever fully remove. He strapped on his belt, heavy with the self-rescuer unit and the battery for his cap lamp. He checked the light. It blazed to life, a sharp beam cutting through the misty air of the locker room. This was his son. Down there, this was the only God he could see. They packed into the elevator cage, shoulder to shoulder. 20 men. Jokes were cracked, mostly about football or hunting. But there was an underlying tension. There always was. As the cage lurched and began its descent, the stomach-dropping sensation hit them. Down 500 feet. 800 feet. The air pressure changed, popping ears. The temperature stabilized to a constant, damp 55 degrees. When the cage gate rattled open, they stepped into a different world. A world of black and gray. The Montrip was Waitinja Loslung rail car, designed to shuttle them 2 miles back to the working face. Tapiled, in keeping their heads low to avoid the clearance line. The ceiling here was only 4 feet high, as the electric motor whined and they rumbled deeper into the earth. Caleb closed his eyes for a second. He thought of the transmission on his truck slipping. He thought of the medical bill for Sarah's asthma on the kitchen counter. That was the trade. You come down here into the dark, so the lights stay on upstairs. You breathe the dust so your family can breathe easy. It was a transaction as old as the hills themselves. They reached Section 4. The continuous miner machine sat there like a dormant beast. A massive steel dragon with a spinning head of carbide teeth. Caleb was the operator today. He loved the machine, and he hated it. It was powerful, but it was loud enough to hide the sound of a cracking roof. "All right, let's make some dust," the foreman yelled over the ventilation roar. Caleb climbed into the operator's cab, grabbing the remote controls. The machine roared to life, the head spinning, water sprays engaging to keep the dust down. He drove it into the coal face. The teeth bit into the black seam, shattering the rock. Coal poured onto the conveyor, black gold flowing out to the world. For 4 hours it was rhythmic. Cut, load, bolt, the roof. Cut, load, bolt. Junior was on the shuttle car, running the coal back to the belt. He was getting better, faster. Caleb watched him, nodding approval. The kid had heart. He reminded Caleb of himself 20 years ago, hungry for the overtime, thinking he was bulletproof. Lunchtime came. They sat in the crosscut, leaning against the cold stone ribs of the mine wall. Caleb opened his pail. He read Sarah's note. "Pork chops for dinner. Don't be late." He smiled, the coal dust around his eyes crinkling. "You ever think about doing something else?" Caleb Jr. asked, biting into a sandwich. His face was black with grime, only his eyes and teeth showing white. "Every day," Caleb said, chewing slowly. "But I don't know nothing else. My daddy died in a mine in Kentucky. My granddaddy died of the black lung. It's in the blood, Junior, like the iron in the rock." "I want to go to trade school," Jer whispered, like it was a secret. "Learn HVAC, fix air conditioners." "Do it," Caleb said sternly. "Don't just talk about it. Tismontan. She takes a toll. She charges interest on every hour you spend down here." Work resumed. The afternoon shift was always harder. The fatigue set in. Caleb was cutting a pillar, a dangerous job where you remove the blocks of coal that hold the roof up, retreating as you go. It required precision. At 2:45 p.m., Caleb felt Italiano. It wasn't a sound at first. It was a change in pressure. The air suddenly felt heavier, pressing against his ear. The ventilation curtain fluttered violently, sucking inward. Then came the sound. Crack, like a gunshot, but louder. A roof bolt snapped, the steel rod shearing off, under millions of tons of pressure. "Back up," Caleb yelled, his voice cutting through the mechanical din. He slammed the reverse lever on the miner. "Junior, move the car!" "Move it now." Junior hesitated for a split second, looking up at the roof. That second was costly. The ceiling above the shuttle car didn't just crack. It did. A slab of sandstone the size of a school bus detached from the layers above. It slammed down, not on the car, but directly behind it, sealing the entry. The wind blast from the falling rock knocked Caleb sideways in his cab. Dust, thick and blinding, instantly filled the air. It was a whiteout of black powder. "Junior!" Caleb screamed, spitting grit. "Amir! Mire! Junior's voice was high, panicked, coming from the darkness ahead. Another crash. This one was closer. The vibration shook Caleb's teeth. The way out the main tunnel had collapsed. They were cut off. The continuous miner was trapped, and they were in a pocket of air, perhaps 50 feet long.
Silence followed. The machinery had died. The ventilation fans were cut off by the collapse. The sudden quiet was more terrifying than the noise. Caleb scrambled out of the cab, his cap lamp slicing through the swirling dust. "Junior, sound off." "Caleb, my leg? I think my leg is stuck." Caleb found him. Junior was pinned against the rock rib, not by the main slab, but by a pile of debris. His right leg was buried up to the knee. He was hyperventilating, his chest heaving, eyes wild. "Look at me!" Caleb commanded, grabbing the boy's shoulders. He used his father voice, the one that didn't allow for argument. "Look at me, son. Breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth." Junior gasped, tears cutting tracks through the cold dust on his face. "We're buried." "Oh, God, Caleb, we're buried." "We are not buried. We are delayed," Caleb lied. He knelt down, inspecting the debris. It was heavy, but movable. "I need you to grit your teeth. I'm going to move this rock. It's going to hurt." Caleb dug. He dug with his hands, his gloves tearing against the sharp slate. He leveraged a steel pry bar from his belt. With a grunt that tore at his abdominal muscles, he shifted the rock. Junior screamed, a raw sound that echoed short in the small space. "It was free." The leg was bad swollen, bleeding. Maybe broken, but he wasn't pinned. Caleb dragged him toward the face of the coal, the safest spot because the roof bolts were freshest there. They sat in the dark. To save batteries, Caleb turned his light to the lowest setting. Junior was shivering, shock setting in. "How much air?" Junior whispered. "Plenty," Caleb said. He checked his multigas detector. Oxygen was at 19%. Methane was 0.5%. Safe for now, but the ventilation was gone. If the methane seeped out of the cut coal, they would be sitting inside a bomb. "Put your rescuer on," Caleb ordered. They popped the seals on the emergency breathing devices, keeping them ready around their necks, but not using them yet. Time dissolved. Down there, without the sun, time is just a concept. It felt like hours. It might have been 20 minutes. Caleb sat close to Junior, sharing body heat. "My wife," Junior mumbled. "She's gonna be so mad I didn't fix the porch step." "She won't care about this step," Caleb said softly. He was thinking of Sarah. He was thinking of the pork chops. He was thinking of the argument they had last week about money. It seemed so stupid now, so incredibly small. Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of chalk. Miners always carried chalk to mark the roof. He turned to the wall of coal next to him. He wrote the date. He wrote, "C. Thorne, J. Miller, 3 p.m. Alive. Why are you writing that? Junior asked, his voice trembling. Protocol, Caleb said, so the rescue team knows where to look. He didn't say the other reason. He didn't say it was a tombstone, just in case. Suddenly, a sound. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the roof, not a crack. A rhythmic thud. Caleb's head snapped up. He grabbed a loose roof bolt and slammed it against the steel strap in the ceiling. Clang, clang, clang. He waited. Tap, 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 tap. There above us, Caleb whispered, a surge of adrenaline flooding his system. They're drilling the rescue hole. The Brotherhood was working. Up on the surface, men were scrambling. Caleb knew the drill. They would be dragging the heavy rig into position. The surveyor would be calculating coordinates. They wouldn't stop. They wouldn't sleep. Junior, listen to that, Caleb said, shining his light on the boy's face. That is the sound of people who give a damn. You hold on to that sound. But the air was getting stale. The detector beeped. Methane was rising 1.5%. Put the nose clips on, Caleb ordered. Breathe through the rescuer. The device was hot. The chemical reaction that created oxygen generated heat. It burned the throat, dry and bitter. But it was life. They sat in silence, the only sound the rasping of their breath through the tubes. Caleb's mind began to wander. The lack of sensory input played tricks on the brain. He saw his father standing in the corner of the mine, holding a canary cage. He saw his truck, shiny and new. He shook his head violently. Stay here. Stay present. He reached out and squeezed Junior's hand. The kid squeezed back, a lifeline of grip strength. Then, the drilling sound changed. It went from a dull thud to a high-pitched whine. It was close. The ceiling 10 feet away crumbled. A drill bit, shiny and silver, broke through the black rock. A rush of fresh, cold air hissed into the chamber. It smelled like rain. It smelled like pine trees. It was the sweetest perfume Caleb had ever known. A small capsule was lowered down the borehole. Inside was a phone. Caleb grabbed it, his hands shaking. He pressed the button. "This is Thorne," he croaked, his voice wrecked from the dust. "Caleb, it's the foreman. We got you. We got a path cleared through the intake shaft. The rescue team is coming in on foot from the south side. They're 10 minutes out. Is the boy okay? He's hurt. Leg. But he's alive. We're both alive. Hang tight. Brother! We're coming." Caleb dropped the phone and slumped against the coal. He ripped the mouthpiece of the rescuer out of his mouth and took a deep gulp of the air coming from the drill hole. He looked at Junior. "You hear that? You're gonna fix that porch step." When the lights of the rescue team appeared around the bend, cutting through the dust like angels, Caleb didn't cry. He didn't have the moisture left in his body. Just nodded. They loaded Junior onto a stretcher. Caleb refused the stretcher. He walked out with a limp, his hand on the shoulder of a rescue man. The ride up the elevator was silent, but different than the morning. It was a reverent silence. When the cage doors opened, the evening air hit him. It was night again. He had missed the sun entirely, but the floodlights of the mine yard were blinding. There were ambulances, there were people, and there, standing behind the yellow tape, clutching a shawl around her shoulders, was Sarah. She didn't run. She stood there, searching the blackened faces of the men. When her eyes locked on Caleb, she crumbled a little, her hand going to her mouth. Caleb walked to her. He didn't care about the soot on his clothes ruining her shawl. He wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her neck. She smelled like laundry detergent and fear. "I told you," he whispered into her ear. "I told you I'd be back for pork chops." She hit him on the chest. A weak, sobbing thump. "You idiot. You stubborn old idiot." Later that night, after the hospital checkup, after the showers that turned the water black, Caleb sat on his own porch. Junior was in surgery for a broken tibia, but he would walk again. He might even go to that trade school. Caleb held a cup of coffee. He looked out at the hills. The mine was still humming in the distance, the conveyor belts never stopping. The mountain was still there, heavy and waiting. He knew he would go back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but he would go back. It was who he was, but tonight he listened to the wind in the trees, and for the first time in years, he didn't just hear the wind. He heard the silence beneath it, and he was grateful for it. He took a sip of coffee, closed his eyes, and finally, truly,